Yes, another great interview from Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir. So in this video, he discusses the impact of Palantir and the process of building disruptive tech companies, while also calling out the shills in the tech industry that rely on a sales team that don't even believe in their own ideas. Now, I think it's important to note that the leaders in Palantir once criticized the idea of having a sales team, which is a team they now currently have. However, this wasn't always the case. I think it's important to note that when companies pay multiple millions of dollars for Palantir's software, these kinds of clients don't want to be talking to the VP of sales, because when you're paying those sums of money for a product, you want to speak directly to the CEO, which is why for the longest time, Alex Karp acted as the salesman for Palantir, where he would be traveling quite consistently to go and meet with prospective clients. But I'm going off on a bit of a tangent. I'll just shut up and let you watch this video. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
We meet again in 10 years, I think we will be 10 to 20 times bigger. I think there's a link between disruptive products and clarity inside your culture and clarity outside your culture. And so that if you want to actually build something that will change the world for the better, whether that's fighting terrorism with civil liberties, targeting our adversaries in software, and or building a successful commercial business. The standard playbook is you kind of build a thin product, you take the product, and then you hire salespeople, and you wander around the world pretending you believe in things you don't believe in. And I don't think that actually works very well. And will not work in an enterprise, and you will not attract and retain the best engineers, certainly not in year 20. Right now, Palantir is one of the most competitive environments in the world for the best talent. I do think we're at a crescendo event with especially what's happening in elite universities, if only because all of us know their value because we participated in some way at those universities. And the best things that have happened to our country, i.e. Silicon Valley as an example, is only possible because of elite educational institutions, broadly defined, including the small colleges, University of Illinois, technical training that happened in our country. That was also and is the magnet of this world. Like if you look at the tech community and the people who are hosting this conference, we are either disproportionately from abroad or spend a lot of our lives abroad. And we are very appreciative of this country and its educational institutions.
I've heard you use a phrase repeatedly, non-playbook players. Can you elaborate on that concept?
Well, I was talking, I often, especially in Europe, because I speak German, I did a PhD there, and to a lesser extent in France, but often abroad, like in Germany, the question is, what went wrong and how can we fix it? They have almost no GDP growth. There's basically a minimal tech scene. If you took a table here, any random table, the tech scene at the table would be larger than all of Germany. And one of the things that is we have as a resource here is we generate people who can act without a playbook. Like to build an important institution, a tech company, one that's disruptive, as an example, you have to build things where there is no one that can teach you how to build it. And that is a rare asset that we have disproportionately in this country that really no one else has at scale. You can always compare things in absolute or relative terms. Of course, the U.S. government could do better. But if you compare the U.S. government to any other government, our product is used basically everywhere in the Western world, with some restrictions we self-impose. We never sold to adversaries, obviously not to China, Iran, Russia. If you compare the U.S. government as procurement to any country of relevant, even comparable size, we're much more meritocratic. The U.S. government has ways of procuring things when it really wants it. And yet, we obviously need to do better. We obviously need ways of verifying what things are working. Obviously, the U.S. government buys a lot of things that shouldn't buy. And, if we're looking at a tightening budget and in general, if we want to outperform China, we're going to have to actually purchase things that are built by things that are, that America does as well, primarily software. And those things have to be proven on the battlefield or proven commercially. There is no watching a PowerPoint and buying the best software. You have to actually test it. That's what Israel does. That's what Ukraine does. That's what our DoD does in part, but not always. And then you have to be able to scale it quicker. One of the big challenges, a lot of the challenges are just software challenges, the way institutions are run. Institutions love lots of hierarchy. Software likes meritocracy. Institutions like the idea you'll have multiple people providing the same product. By and large, in software, there's one person, one company that provides one product. Large institutions, the U.S. government doesn't like that. Software is built by people that tend to be very focused on saying things that are annoying, obnoxious, unpleasant, and true. Large institutions don't always like to interact with people like that. Software, Silicon Valley is built on attracting and retaining people who are between 1 in a million and 1 in 100,000 at whatever they do. But they may be the 1 in 100,000 bad at explaining to a general or someone how they would actually implement the system. It's a huge cultural shock. And a lot of what has to change is not even stuff that has to be managed. Just like you have to learn to like or at least work with the people that produce the most valuable thing. And for us in this country, that is deployable and usable technology, especially technologies, hardware and software that are powered by companies that are younger and built all across America, disproportionately in Silicon Valley. And that's like, if when you're building a business, you really do grow to like the people who perform very quickly, or you will not have a business. And, at Palantir, as an example, I manage the most interesting, difficult, and in times off-kilter people you could ever imagine. And we have built some of the more interesting products in the world, and it would not be possible without those people. And you can't just say, well, that person's annoying, that person has views I don't like, that person can't integrate. Yeah, but they build the best products in the world. And that's a cultural shift, and we have to go through that, because otherwise, like, China and Russia have a huge advantage. Russia is very good at manufacturing. China is very good at engineering. Their leaders are engineers. They're not very good at organizing and building a tech scene. And, in our business, there are no Chinese or Russian competitors, not one. Just think about that. We have no competition from those countries. Not at all. I mean, not even like fake competition. Nowhere in U.S. commercial, at any adversarial country. I've never even heard of someone saying we're choosing between Palantir and the Russian or Chinese product. And believe me, I've heard about people choosing between us and like 108 software. My uncle makes it, and they throws a great steak dinner. Like that, it's like this is a absolute disproportional. In fact, the delta is so disproportional, most Americans don't really believe it, because they're like, oh, okay, well, the trains and the schools work better in China and Russia. Their leaders seem very bright. Why would their software suck? And it's very hard to explain, actually, why we are so good at producing innovative tech companies that disrupt. But there are some obvious things that we have no one else has. The best immigrants, the best schools. We had the best schools. The best ways of work, fairness, meritocracy, these kind of weird, simple ideas. And I lived half my life abroad trying to get something to work fair in a fair fashion at the German university. Like in Germany, I was always fighting, as naive as I was, to hire the most qualified person. And people would say, but why would you hire the most qualified person? No one hires the most qualified person. That person never gets a job. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm just American, but we in America, we occasionally hire the most qualified person. And like these things metastasize and give you a structural advantage that is truly unique. And our basic job as tech leaders and leaders who care and in Congress, people who care and people who are actually courageous, is to actually just make sure these things get implemented in the U.S. economy and for our warfighters.
So a question about U.S.-China competition: who's winning the tech arms race? And even if you assume that the United States will out-innovate China, do you worry, as I do, that China could be more effective at integrating emerging technologies into their government, into their military-industrial complex?
Well, look, I think it's obvious we're somewhat ahead. We're not so far ahead that we couldn't screw it up. Of course, what I'm supposed to say, and I believe, is we have to move quicker. We have to spend more. I do think, like, making sure we figure out how to reform our elite institutions so that they're not completely destructive, dysfunctional, and anti the progressive values that represent America broadly defined is a really big issue for our country. And you might be surprised how if we fail at that, the other things kind of don't work as well. So, I mean, obviously, it's my self-interest is that we should spend more, we should spend better. It should be meritocratic. That's hugely advantage for Palantir. But if we can get a way to come together, left people who are of decent values, right, left, and center, and say these are the lines, we shouldn't cross them, I think that's much more important than anything else.
There are commentators who worry about generative AI, large language models. There are those who fear that we're becoming like Dr. Frankenstein. We're creating a monster that we can neither fully understand or fully control. And I get the sense that despite the fear of the unknown, you feel like we should embrace what you've described as this Oppenheimer moment. So can you talk about that?
Yep. Look, there are two issues. One is that it is the key to keeping our GDP growing the GDP of America, and that is actually important. If you look at France, the country I spent a lot of time in and admire, between 61 and 91, their GDP grew roughly like ours, maybe a little less. We were 164%. They were 164%. We were like 184%. And then in the last 30 years, I think it's been significantly less, but you kind of have a feeling like America's GDP story led by tech will shift. And, we haven't announced last quarter, but the quarter before, Palantir grew 70%. And no one thinks that's because of our sales. So it's because, you just have massive absorption of technology. You can now build a Japanese manufacturing plant in the U.S. with AI. You can manage American workers as if they were Japanese engineers in the U.S. You can power hospitals with low margins and do it ethically and make sure that discrimination is not part of the selection process of who's the patient and verify it. It's just a myriad of use cases that change the productivity of U.S. institutions. And then you get to, again, what is the central advantage America could have over its adversaries? Advantage is defined not by what you can do, but what they can't do. Because you always have to ask, is it something that we can do they suck at? In every aspect of competition. And so I do think there are real dangers, but it'd be very good. We should, and then, we should embrace what we have in this country, figure out how to regulate it in a way that makes sense. There's been a lot of effective discussions here, and run like hell so that our competition doesn't beat us. And again, I don't have to remind people in this room, but it is, we assume that the world embraced liberalism broadly defined because it was a better idea. But I think it embraced liberalism because people looked at the U.S. and thought, well, that's a better way of organizing my life for my citizens. And that was backed by U.S. power. That would not have happened simply based on winning ideas alone. It was right ideas, charismatic ideas, and superiority on the battlefield. And you need that combination. That is the combination that allows people to see the value in things that are obviously valuable. It's not ipso facto that they absorb those ideas.
I guess final question. You founded Palantir 20 years ago in a post 9/11 world. What are your hope and ambitions for the next 20 years?
I mean, look, there's world peace, but leaving world peace aside, I do see, I do think the Palantir project and its success is a harbinger for other people doing things that would make the world a better, fairer, more equitable, decent place.